Okay, as we get started with our training, the first thing I'm going to have you do is open up this Tompkins file. Now, this is a file that we use for all the FOSS4g training. It's Tompkins County, New York. It's got their parcels, it's got flood zones, it's got fire stations and buildings and all kinds of different things in here. But in this one, I wanted to show you a little example of some of the data that we have because we're taking it from various sources. So for instance, if I hover over the buildings, you can see these come from Postgres. So if you've taken the Enterprise GIS class, you've already built that. The fire stations, they come from a shapefile. The flood zones, they also come from a shapefile. The parcels come from a geodatabase. And the soils, they actually come from a SQLite database. And finally, these municipalities come from a KML file. So what I'm trying to do is just throw a lot of different data at us that you might experience in your own environment. And the question is, how can we start to present this data in a way that is a little easier to manage rather than having to convert everything over? And again, if I turn off the school districts and the municipalities, you can see a little bit more of the kind of data that we're working with here. And we can turn off the flood zones as well. So we've got actual parcels. So this is the general context of the data that we're going to be working in. Like I said, just like all the other data we've been using in all of my training classes to give you this municipal type context. Now, for those of you who haven't taken the enterprise course or might have other difficulties, I'm going to have some of the data in different formats so that you can still go ahead with it. You won't have all the benefits of really the cool parts of working with Postgres. So I really would advise you try and get that course so that you'll learn how to implement an enterprise GIS and then can have Geoserver talk directly to a Postgres database. But again, if you don't have that, we can still work through the whole idea. And this is an example of what I was talking about with the enterprise class. So in that class, we created a back-end enterprise data server, and we had multiple users all hitting on that server and working with the data, all seamlessly and simultaneously. It was really cool. We also developed a Python package and an application that also talked to the Postgres data server. What we're doing in this class, and one of the things I did in that class is I just demonstrated the use of Geoserver, but what this class is specifically doing is it's taking data from either Postgres or shapefiles or KMLs or other files, and it's presenting it to the world through an internet browser. Now, one of the things that's really cool about having Postgres as your backend enterprise server is we can have Geoserver work directly with Postgres. So I'm going to do a lot of that demonstration. You may not have the ability to do that unless you've taken the enterprise course, but that's okay. You can still just serve up shapefiles and it will work in a very similar fashion. But again, the goal of what we're going to try and do here is have an internet browser connect to Geoserver. And also, one of the things we don't have here is having user software actually access the data over the internet rather than through a password protection in Postgres. Oh, and one last thing. This is the directory that we have all of our data in. So see training in Tompkins. So we have geodatabases in here. We have shapefiles in this folder. We have SQLite databases located here as well as some Postgres data that we have here. So if you have some understanding of Postgres, you can bring in the backup file and begin to work with that. So that gets us where we need to be. Let's move on to the next step, which is just installing the software and then pointing to the data.